Hello everybody, this is Module 6B, Chords in a minor key. So now we're going to take all of the stuff that we learned from a major key setting and apply it to a minor key setting and understand how minor chords work in a root position setting. So the main questions that you're probably asking are, what are the differences between major and minor chords? Well, major keys have one form, which is just the major scale, right? We have a whole, half, whole, half, whole, pattern of whole and half steps. And then your minor keys have three different forms, which we learned about in our second week, I believe, going over harmonic, melodic, and natural minor. So as a quick recap, natural minor has the following whole and half step patterns. You have whole, half, half, whole, right? And that makes our natural minor scale. Essentially, to create the parallel minor of a key, you would just add three flats to whatever key you're in. So say you have E flat major has three flats, B flat, E flat, and A flat, and if you were to make that E flat minor, the parallel minor, you would add 6 flats total, adding 3 to the 3 that you already had, right? Anyways, these natural minor scales, harmonic minor deviates from the natural minor scale because the 7th scale degree is raised by 1/2 step, and melodic minor deviates from natural minor because on the way up you will raise scale degrees 6 and 7, and then you will lower them again on the way down in the descending form of our scale, creating just another natural minor scale on the way down. Another thing that's really important between major and minor keys is that most minor key chords are representative of the harmonic minor scale. So with one exception, the triads and 7th chords that are found in minor keys are constructed out of the notes from the harmonic minor scale. The only chord that does not construct its notes from the harmonic minor scale is the 3 chord. We are not going to raise the 7th scale degree of the key in this chord. However, the 5 and 7 diminished chords, within those, the 7th scale degree is raised, and this is because these chords typically resolve to the 1 chord or the tonic. So when I'm talking about this second bullet down here, I'm referring to the 7th scale degree of the key that we are in. So if we were in C minor, right, we know that we have C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, right? So harmonic minor, this isn't my natural minor scale, right? But if I were to make this harmonic minor, I'm going to raise my 7th scale degree by 1/2 step, which would make this a B natural, right? So if I'm looking here, in every single chord that I write, I'm going to raise the 7th scale degree of the key that I am in, not the 7th scale degree above the root of your chord. So don't get those two confused. However, I can show you how this works. If we were in C minor, right, I said we'd have 3 flats, B flat, E flat, A flat, and you'd have C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B natural, and C for my C harmonic minor scale, right? And I want to show you how I would build the chords on each of these scale degrees. So the first one I would have is built off of C, right? We're going to make sure that all of our accidentals align as to what's in the key signature. So over here we have a C, an E flat, and a G, right? I'm just going to write it here as a courtesy for you so that you could see it. And this is our minor 1 chord. So if I were to play this on the piano, it would sound like this. C, E flat, G, right? The next one that we have occurs naturally. Notice that all of these occur naturally. So you have between D, F, and A flat here, which is A2, and our 2 chord is always going to be half diminished. Oops. So you go from C, E, and G to D, D, F, and A flat. Then we have E flat, G, and B flat. Which is our 3 chord, and this is major. And notice here, if you look here, the seventh note of our key signature is B natural, right? We do not have that B natural here. We're going to keep that B flat so that we can make a major 3 chord. So then over here you have E, G, and B flat. Our 4 chord is going to align with our 1 chord and B minor. So we have C, D, E flat, F, A flat, and C, right? And if we look at that, that's a minor triad. Then we have G. Here we're going to raise our B flat to a B natural, and we have G, B, and D for our 5 chord, right? Creating a major chord. Our 6 chord is going to be major as well, and we're going to have an A flat, C, and E flat. And then the last one is a B flat, right? But since this is our 7th scale degree, we're going to make it a B natural. So we have B, D, F, right? And we have a 7 diminished chord over here having So those are our chord functions in a minor key. So ways that you can remember this is kind of like the major scale. So if you have something that's built off of your 3rd scale degree, it's going to be a 3 chord. The 3 chord is major, the 5 chord is major, and the 6 chord is major. So these are all of our major Roman numerals in minor keys. Minor Roman numerals are 1 and 4, which you can kind of see here. They kind of follow each other, you know. In a major key, 1 and 4 are both major with 1, 4, 5. And then your diminished chords here are 2, which will be half diminished, and a 7 chord, which is fully diminished. So if we look here, really what it means to be half diminished is to have that 7th on top. So what you would have is D here, right? D, F, A flat, and then a C, right? And then if you're looking, we know that a half diminished 7, this equals half diminished, right? That circle with the slash through it. And we know that half diminished is a diminished triad plus a minor 7th on top. And if we look, a C natural is a minor 7th. So if we look what the 7th, the quality of the 7th is above that D, we have a C natural. We know that a major 7th would be 1/2 step below, you could think about it that way, to get a major 7th above D, which would be C sharp. So we know that that minor 7th is a C natural. Whereas over here, you have a fully diminished triad, right? For your 7 chord, and then you add the 7th on top, which over here would be an A flat. And if we look, we have a fully diminished, so just the circle is fully diminished, and that means that you have a diminished triad with a diminished 7th on top. So if we're looking at that to find the major 7th above B, my brain is saying I'm going to go 1/2 step below. So I know that a major 7th would be A sharp, right? And then to make that a minor 7th, I would have to make it A natural. And then to make it a diminished 7th, I would have to make it A flat, which is exactly what's written here. Notice that these qualities assume themselves naturally as a function of the key signature. So, yeah. Essentially, the easiest thing to do is just to memorize this, maybe put it down on a sheet so that you're able to see it somewhere, remembering that anything built on scale degrees 1 and 4 are minor in a minor key. Anything built on scale degree 3, 5, or 6 will be major, and then 2 will be half diminished, 7 will be fully diminished. So similarities. There's 2 chord qualities that are common. They stay the same, which are the 5 chord and the 7 chord. 7 will always stay diminished, 5 will always stay major, which also will help remind you to raise the 7th scale degree in the key, not as opposed to the chord. And then in minor keys, the Roman numerals should be marked as followed. So you could take a note at those. You could pause if you need, but I'm going to continue going on, because we need to add 7ths. So the chords that are the most common in any major or minor key that will have 7ths added above the root are the 5 chord, the 2 chord, and the 7 chord. So I wrote those before, and we kind of explained them before, but if I were to write it out, right, B flat, E flat, A flat, I have C, E, G, D, F, A, C, right? We knew that. That is my 2 half diminished 7, because if we look, we have a D, F, A flat, and a C. We know that that's that minor 7th there. That makes that half diminished. We have E flat, G, B flat, which is our major 3. We have a 4, F, A flat, C, right? And then we have a 5 chord, which is another one that is very common to have a 7th added. I'm going to raise the 7th of my key, which if you wanted to, you could even think about what that is before, and when you know you're in a minor key, which it will tell you. It will have a little marker in the front below the key signature to say this is the key of F sharp minor, C minor, whatever minor key it is, and it will say that, and you can write that 7th in there so that you're able to see that, and you'd know that if you saw that altered 7th, it can only be one of a few chord possibilities, which is that 5 chord. We know that the 6th chord is major as well, because we have a G, B natural, D, 6, and then 7 will be fully diminished with your, excuse me, I did this wrong. Your 6 will be, your 6th chord will be major with your A flat, C, E flat, right? And then the 7th chord is fully diminished. You have that diminished triad starting on B, D, F, and A flat. We went over there to show you that you do have that diminished 7 there. Make sure to add the 7th. And the 7th scale degree is raised, making it a B natural. So if you see a B natural, or whatever your 7th is, there's only the 5 chord or the 7 chord that have that raised 7th scale degree of the minor key that you're in. So you'll know that it's either a 5 chord or a 7 chord. Oh, and I have to write my 5/7 there. So if I were to effectively play this on the piano and butcher it really poorly, it would sound like this. All of the chords that you have. So we're starting with C minor, 1. You have a D half diminished 7, so you have, and then next, that major, E flat major, then you have, and we have an F natural. We're not going to make it an F sharp there on the 5/7. Then we have, and then we go to our fully diminished 7. Now, if this were a half diminished 7 chord, we'd know that we would have a minor 7th instead of a diminished 7th, so you would have an A natural. So that would be a 7 half diminished 7 with the slash, as opposed to your fully diminished 7, which usually goes back to 1. Which is why, in fact, we raise those 7th scale degrees, because it allows us to create a stronger pullback to the tonic. The 3 chord is less likely to move back to a 1 chord, like the 5 chord, and the 7 chord usually will move back to 1 chord, hence why we have that raised 7th scale degree of the key that we're in, because it creates a stronger pullback to 1. So if you had this, as opposed to making it a major chord, right? That would be my 7 chord with a B flat instead of a B natural, still the same notes, and then going back to 1. It's like, well, the climactic part was the 7 chord, right? We want our climactic part to be the 1 chord back again. You feel all that tension, and then it suddenly releases back to 1. So, an example that I have for you is example 10-7, which is a minor key harmonic analysis example that is found in the textbook. There's a couple of asterisks here which you could read as we go through, but you're going to do the same thing with this as you would with the major key exercises. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to condense every pitch into one staff. This doesn't have to be the bass clef staff. However, I find it most effective on the bass clef staff, because in the next module, whatever note is in the bass may not always be the root of the chord. So if we look over here, we have a G, we have a D, right, and we have a B natural. So if I'm looking here, I have G, B, and D, and we're in the key of B minor, which, by the way, maybe we should write this out so that you are able to see it too. I strongly recommend this, especially if you're new to music theory, just so that you're able to see it. So we're in B minor, right? Notice that it tells you right here. I'm writing out my key signature. We're in B minor. I have a B, D, and F sharp, right? Which is a minor chord, which is 1. I have a C, E, and G, which is my 2 chord, which I'll make half diminished because I'll add my 7 on top. I'll get my major 3 chord by going D, F sharp, A, right? We're going to make sure that we have everything from the key signature in there. We have an E, G, and B, which is a minor 4. We have an F sharp, A, and C sharp, but because we are in the key of B, we are going to raise our 7th scale degree by 1/2 step, so we do truly have that 5/7 there. A sharp is my 7th scale degree in the key of B major. Okay, and then we're going to move to our 6th scale degree, which we have G, B, D, which is a major chord, and then 7 is fully diminished with a 7, so we have an A sharp, C sharp, E, and G, right? So that's what I have there for my fully diminished chord. So this is all the chords that I have, all the possibilities that I can have. So if I'm looking here, I have a G, B, and D, right, written out, and I'm saying, okay, for what I'm doing right now, my root is always going to be in the bass. And if I count up in the key of B, I have B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G. G is my 6th scale degree. I do have a major triad, as you can see right here, right? So I know that that has to be a major 6 chord written in there. Then over here, you have an E, a G, another E, and a B. We don't need to repeat that extra E. So we have E, G, and B. So if I look here, well, I know E is my 4th scale degree. Because we're in root position, you can see there that our root is the bottom note of our chord. So you have E, G, and B, which is a minor triad. Between E to G, you have a minor 3rd, and between G to B, you have a major 3rd. Your resultant 5th is perfect. So then we have a C, we have a G, we have another G, and a B. And this is something that's common that I don't know if I mentioned in the other video, but there are times where the author may eliminate a scale degree that you have. So right here, you have a C, G, and B, right? It would not be smart of you to put that C right there because that's a 2nd. So just keep that there because you know why? If you put an E inside here, you have C, E, G, and B, right? So if you're looking at this, you know that this is a 2 half diminished 7 chord, right? So we have 2 half diminished 7. And we know that we have the 7th there because we have a B natural, right? So the 7 that I'm referring to in this 2 half diminished 7 chord is referring to the 7th above the root of the chord, not the 7th within the key that we're in, which would be an A sharp. So you have that 7 there. You don't have your 3rd. You have a root, a 5th, and the 7th. Yeah, so that is that. Then you have on your next chord, you have an F on both staves. You have another F, and you have an A sharp, right? So we have F sharp, A sharp. We can then again assume that there's a C here, right? And we're going to make that a C sharp because of our key signature, right? So if we're looking here, we're in the key of B. What note is F in the key of B minor? It's the 5th scale degree. For right now, everything is in root position, so our root, F sharp, is in the bass, meaning that we're going to have a 5 chord. Do we have a 7th? No. If we had a 7th, that would be an E natural, right? Because you had F sharp, A, C sharp. There's no E natural written. Therefore, we only have a 5 chord rather than a 5/7 chord. over here we have a B, we have an F, we have a D, and we have another B, right? So I don't need to write that other B on the top. I have B, D, and F sharp, right? And if I'm looking here, that seems like a minor triad to me, and my root is in the bass, and I have a minor triad, which means that I have my 1 chord again. Then over here we have an A sharp, and if I'm looking at this and saying, oh my goodness, this can be one of 2 options. This could either be a 5 chord or a 7 chord. Because I know that everything in this example is in root position, meaning my root of the chord is in the bass voice, I know that it's going to be a 7 chord, but I want to map this out with you. So we have that A sharp, we have the altered 7th scale degree in the key of B minor. You have a G, you have an E, and you have a C, right? So I have A sharp, C sharp, E, and G. Perfect. So that is my 7 diminished 7. And you could even just look at what, oh, that was not what I wanted. You could look at what you have over here, right? And then you're going to say to yourself, oh, does my condensed triad over here that you wrote in, does that match with anything? Yes, it does. And that's why I like, for students that are newer, to write out those chord progressions for whatever key it is in, so that you're able to see it better. It is definitely not a requirement, but I strongly advise that you do it. So anyways, over here you have a B natural, you have an F sharp, you have a D, so you have B, D, F sharp, and another D at the top. We know that this is 1 chord. Really quick in terms of chord progressions, aka the order in which chords are placed in a melodic melody. Over here you have a 7 chord. We know that that will typically go back to 1. Another chord that will go back to 1 is 5. A 4 chord will go back to 1. You'll never see something like a 6 chord or a 2 chord going back to 1. There's not as strong as a gravitational pull. Usually you'll do 2, 5, 1. What we have here. 2, 5, 1. This 1, 6, 4, 2, 5, 1 is a common chord progression. You could see more about that in the textbook. Anyways, over here you have an E, a G, another E, and a B, right? So if I'm looking, well, I know that E is my 4th scale degree. I have E, G, and B, which is my 4th scale degree, right? So I'm building it off of my 4 chord. And then I have an F, I have an E natural, and I have an A sharp, right? F is in the bass. I have an A sharp, I have a C, and an E would be the most logical thing. So yet again, these asterisks are saying the 5th is again omitted, leaving a root, a 3rd, and a 7th. And this occurs sometimes in tonal music. When all but 1 note of a 7th chord is missing, label the chord for the bottom note of the interval of a 3rd. So you have here, that was a lie. That's not a 7 chord. So if I'm looking here, I'm like, okay, what is my note F sharp in the key of B minor? So you have B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, right? So that's why it has to be a 5/7 chord. And then of course we're gonna end back on 1. We have our tonic here, B, D, and F. I would play this for you, but I'm very horrible at piano. So take a minute, pause, make sure that your answers are lining up with what I have here. And I'm going to move on. Okay, so this is exercise 10B. I chose these 2 activities to go through with you. You can complete the others, and I will grade them and give you some feedback. Essentially, all that you're doing here is it gives you a key in the bottom, and you'll be able to see the key signature as well. And what you are to do is to label what that chord is in terms of that key, giving you a couple of different examples. So it's like this, what we just did before, but in a very experimental setting, I guess, where each chord is a new thing. We're not worried about chord progressions right now off the bat. I'm just worried about, can you find what chord number this is based off of the scale degree. Everything is still in root position here. So we are in the key of C sharp minor to begin with, and I want you to first think about what is my 7th scale degree, because that makes a difference. And you can see here that you have a G, you have a D, you have a B sharp, and you have an F, right? Well, an F sharp. And you can see here that you have your 5-7 chord all mapped out for you. The sharps and the key signature are automatically applied over here. So one thing that I want you to do is to focus on, well, what is my 7th scale degree? And you will be able to find out what that is if you think, well, what's 1/2 step below C sharp? And you're like, oh, okay, that's a C natural, right? But if we needed that to be a different pitch, you know it's going to be some sort of B that's going to be my 7th, right? So what's 1/2 step below C sharp, right? It's C natural, or B sharp. We have to make it B sharp because in a scale, we know that we're not going to skip or repeat any note names. So our 7th note is going to be B sharp. As you can see over here, our 7th is raised. So that's another indicating factor, knowing that we have a 5-7 chord here or a 7 diminished 7 chord. So another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just write out all the note names. So we have C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp. That should be right. Well, I guess perhaps I would lower this for my natural minor and then harmonic minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. So what I'm looking over here, I have an E, I have a B, I have a G, and I have another E, right? So I'm looking, I have E, G sharp, and B. And in my key of C sharp, I know that E is my 3rd scale degree, meaning that I have a major 3 chord here. So you have, right? As opposed to your, that's your minor 1 chord, and then your major 3. Then over here you have a D, you have a C. I'm going to keep that C where it is. I'm not going to write it right next to it because I know that I want to be trying to stack in thirds. You have a D, an F, an A, and a C. You have an F sharp as per your key signature, and you have a C sharp as per your key signature. So if I'm looking here, I know that D sharp is my 2nd scale degree here, which I know because in that key of C, D sharp, C, in the key of C sharp, D sharp is my 2nd scale degree. I know that this is a half diminished 7th chord because I do have a 7th located above the root, and that 7th is a minor 7th on top. And that would sound like D sharp, F sharp, D sharp, F sharp. That 2 half diminished 7 would go back to 1. And then my next one that I have over here is I have a C, I have an E natural, I have a G, and I have a C, right? And that would be just a minor 1 chord. We have the tonic in the bass, with C, E, and G natural. As per the B flat example, let's find my 7th. Well, I know that my 1/2 step below B flat is A natural, so we're going to have an A natural as my raised 7th to be able to find those 5 and 7 diminished chords. So over here we have a B flat, we have an F, we have a D, and we have another F. And we know that this is B flat, D flat, and F flat. We know that this is a minor 1 chord, right? We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Oops. Cool. So then over here you have an A natural, right? I'm like, okay, well, I know this is on root position, so I know that it has to be the 7th chord. However, if I didn't know, I would just keep writing everything out. So when my advice is when you have this jump of a 7th here, I wouldn't even write that 7th in. I want to stack as far as I can from what I have on the bottom. You have an A, you have a C, you have an E, and you have a G, right? And we know that this is an A natural, you have a C natural, you have an E flat, and you have a G flat, right? So this is definitely that 7 diminished 7 chord. You add the 7th because you have a 7th above the root. here you have C, you have a G, you have an E, and you have a B, right? So you have that 7th above the root, so you know that this has to be a 2 chord, a 5 chord, and a 7th chord rationally with all the work that we're doing. So you have a C flat, an E flat, or sorry, a C, an E flat, a G flat, and a B flat, right? And if you look at your thinking about like what note names you have, C is the 2nd scale degree. You know that that has to be a half diminished 7 chord. And if you look here, you have a C, E flat, and G flat, which is a diminished triad, right? And then you have the minor 7th above the bass, proving that it's a half diminished 7 chord built on the 2nd scale degree. Then we have a G, you have a D and a B, so G, B, D, and another G. We know that G, B flat, and D is a minor triad. You have B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, and G flat. Well, actually, you have all 3 of these flats. I'm sorry. You're on the 6th scale degree. We have a major chord, and you have your 6th chord. So essentially, what I'm looking for to align here is, because we're still in root position, whatever my bottom note is, how does that relate in terms of that key of like B flat? So you have B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, right? Okay, we know that anything that has a root of an A flat, whatever has an A natural rather, because you have that 7th scale degree raised. If you have that A natural, well, I know that that's going to have my 7th chord. Whereas going forward, we can't necessarily trust that whatever is in that bottom voice is going to be our root of the chord. Cool. So then we have exercise 10C, which I wanted to go through with you as well. If you would like to do this on your own and double check your answers later, please follow with chapter 10 in the textbook. Exercises 10B and 10C contain content from this lecture. Another gentle reminder as well to complete exercises 9B and 9C, which are major key worksheets that are very similar, just with your major keys. So really quickly, you have in a major key, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then your minor key, Roman numerals would be this: 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 diminished. And typically that can have a 7. And same with your 5 chords as well. So you can take a minute, pause that. I'm going to go back and do the other ones in a similar fashion to what I did the first chorale in. So if you would like to pause now, I'm going to work on exercise 10C. And you can do that work now and then double check your work with what I got later. Alright, so over here we have exercise 10C. I'm in F sharp minor to begin with, as you can see by our little notice here, and also the 3 sharps gives it away. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find whatever my leading tone is. So one pitch name below that, so my 7th is going to be some sort of an E, right? And then I'm going to say to myself, well, F sharp, I know that 1/2 step below, that would be an F natural, right? So we need an E sharp or an F natural. We need to have the E sharp there, even though it sounds like an F natural, because it's 1 pitch lower. If you have a question about this, please just shoot me an email, and I have no problem clarifying it even more. So over here, we have an F, we have a C, we have another F, and we have an A, right? So we're going to use our key signature. We have a minor 1 chord again, because we have an F, an A, and a C sharp. It might be helpful to even look at it over here. If I were to go like this, and we had an F sharp chord, we'll do F sharp, A, C sharp, which is 1. My 2 is half diminished 7. So you have G, B, D, F. Wait, maybe I was right. Okay. G, A, C, E. You have a 4 chord, which is B, D, F sharp. You have a C, E, G, B chord. You could also write this out in bass clef if you'd like to. Just 5, 7. Your 6th chord is D, F sharp, A. And your 7, diminished 7, E, G, B, D. Okay, so this is what you should have for all of your chords. Then you have a B flat, a B flat, a D, and an F. And if we look, we're in the key of F sharp minor. If you have a B on the bottom in your bass voice, you're going to look at where you have a B as well, which you know you have in a 4 chord. There's no 7th located above this root. You don't have an A, so it's just a 4 chord. Then you have an F, you have an A. I'm going to skip that A. You have a C, and you have another F, right? So you have F sharp, A, C sharp, which is back to our minor 1 chord, right? Then you have a C sharp. I'm going to skip that B for now. You have an E sharp. You have a G sharp because of the key signature, and you have a B natural, right? And if I'm looking at that, that looks awfully familiar to my 5/7 chord, right? Built on the 5th scale degree in F sharp minor. So you have F sharp, G sharp, right? Yeah. F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp. And then we have another F. We have an A. We have a C and another F. F, A, C, and another F. So that works there. And I'm back to my 1 chord, right? As you can see here, you have an F sharp, A, and C sharp. And then you have a B flat, a B flat, a D, and an F. We don't have a 7th above, so we don't need to add a 7th. But you have something that's built on scale degree what? What Roman numeral would this be? If you said 4 chord, that is correct. And then we go back to the 1 chord again. And boom, there you have it. Typically, all of these exercises will start and end on your tonic. So you'll have a major or minor 1 chord to begin with. Now over here, what I'm going to do for my next exercise, I'm going to find that 7th in the key of G minor. We know that it's going to be an F sharp because that is 1/2 step lower. We know we got that pitch difference. It's 1 pitch lower, and then we know that between G and F sharp, there is 1/2 step there. So I'm going to look. I'm going to make all of my open position chords into a closed position. So you have a G, a G, a D, and a B. So G, B, D. I have my minor 1 chord, right? Over here, you have a D, an F sharp, another D, and an A. So you have D, F sharp, A, which in the key of G, you have G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F sharp, G, right? For my harmonic minor scale, and I guess my E flat there. Perfect. So if I have a D, F, and A, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and back to 1. So over here, since we're started on D, we have D, F sharp, A. We do not have a C, which means that we just have a 5 chord here. If we had the C on top, it would be a 5/7, but we don't have that, so we're not going to add a 7th where there's no 7th above the root. I'm not talking about an F sharp, which is present in there. So when I'm talking about a 7th being added to the Roman numeral like chord designation, I'm talking about the 7th above the root, not the 7th in the key. When I'm talking about the 7ths that are raised in a minor key, I'm talking about the literal 7th scale degree being raised in each chord. So anyways, over here we have 2 G's. You have a D and a B. G, D, and B flat. Meaning we're going back to 1 again, right? You have the root and the bass. And if you look here, just looking at your root, you have a B, you have an F, you have a D, and you have another D. So you have a B flat, a D, and an F, which is a major chord, one thing to think about. And then you have that 3, right? Because we're building on the 3rd scale degree. You have another D, F sharp, a D, A, C. We don't have any A, right? So we're going to do our best. We're going to substitute that A in, just, it's there in our minds, right? So you have a D, F sharp, D, C. So essentially when you have something that's spread apart, you want to make sure that you're stacking as many thirds as you can, which is why we kind of input that, the imaginary 5th there, which is your A natural. So we know that this is a 5 chord, and we know because we have that 7th above the root, that C natural, that's a 5/7 chord. Then we have a G, G, a D, and a B flat. So you have a G, B, D flat, a minor 1 chord again. You have C, G, E, and C. So you have C, E flat, and G, which is a minor chord. You know that this is 4 because you're built on G, A, B flat, C, right? Then you have another 5 chord again, which is very common for you to have prior to going back to your 1 chord, right? Another common chord progression is 1, 4, 5, and then 1. And then you need to ask yourself, do I have a 7th above here? And the answer is yes. You have 4 distinct pitches. You have a 7th above the root of your chord, which is D minor. So these are the answers to exercise 10C for the first part of it, as well as 10B, which you can go back and look at. I really hope that these were helpful. I know that this content is starting to get hard, so if you please have any questions about any of this, reach out via email. We can always schedule a Zoom session. I can always answer your emails. Whatever you need to feel that you have confidence in this area of expertise. This is some of the harder stuff in music that even I don't really like doing that much. But it's gotten easier because I've practiced doing it so many times. So the more practice that you do, the more that you follow the regiments that I'm telling you to do, like find the 7th scale degree in this minor key. Great. Now write everything out so that you can see it, kind of double checking yourself. Use as many tools as you can to your advantage to help you understand the notes and the pitches and the theory that we're doing here. So I hope that this was helpful. Please, again, as usual, let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you in the next module.